Welcome to Fantasy Football Hub. I'm joined by a face you might know. It's Conor Aspell, and Conor is currently 170th in the world and the top Fulham fan on FPL. So any Fulham fans out there, get in the comments. Conor, how's the season been so far?
Yeah, it's been really, really enjoyable. This is my first season actually playing Fantasy Premier League properly,
Hmm.
and it's been an absolute blast.
I'd say everyone's a little bit jealous when you say that, to be honest. Your first season, you're smashing it.
Yeah, so the main reason I did it was that I went to Fantasy Football Fest in
Hmm.
August because I was going over to see West Ham versus Man City because I wanted to see Haaland's debut, and I was minding my friend's apartment. And I thought, oh, I'll make a really fun team at the start, and I'll pick a lot of non-Premier League players, and I'll try to see if I can get some reactions out of people and start some conversations.
How'd that go?
It's pretty fun. I was like, oh, I think Mitrovic is going to do exactly what he did in the Championship in the Premier League. And people were like, not a chance.
You're an idiot.
You're an
Yeah.
idiot. Haaland, like you saw, has missed in the Community Shield. He's not a strong pick. Like Saliba, who's this guy?
Yeah.
You're going for Nick Pope in goals. You're going for, I think Sven Botman was another one people had a problem with. And I was like,
Yeah. I
you guys
remember
don't watch
because
League On.
we're in a private league together, and I remember saying early, like, kind of laughing because you were miles ahead, and I was like, the wheels are going to fall off because you were basically picking. They weren't like mad differentials, but like when everyone was going Liverpool, you were going City. When everyone was going City, you were going Spurs. When everyone was going here, you were going there, and I was like, this guy doesn't know what he's at. But I think it was me who didn't know what he was at. You said before you used to. We'll just talk about this briefly, but I thought it was quite interesting. You used to use like modeling, and was it? I don't know. Explain that to me. That's over my head.
Yeah, so I really got into it when I read a ton of articles about Magnus Carlsen being top of the Premier League because I'm really into chess, and all the comments on Reddit were like, everyone he's competing with are bots, and I was like,
Hmm.
hey, that could be me. So I started actually doing scripting in fantasy rugby, and
Hmm.
then I eventually talked to one of my friends. He was like, hey, we should try this in fantasy Premier League, and then they've got a really nice API,
Yeah.
and so I wrote a ton of stuff on it and just had to run it automatically. And so the first season, I really, really, really underestimated how difficult and how big just picking stuff is. So
Hmm.
like in rugby, you know who's playing beforehand. They'll announce all the teams on a Friday before the deadline.
Yeah.
So realistically, you'll have 15 positions and you'll have six players in Fantasy Six Nations. Whereas in Fantasy Premier League, for like your 11 players, you need to pick 20.
Hmm.
And or even maybe even more if there's potentially uncertainty. So I didn't do well with just one bot. And then the next season I went, okay, I'm going to run 1,000 bots. And so they used to not have any security at all, where I was able to use a WebDriver to make a 10-minute mail and then just generate as many accounts as I want. And I was able to run slightly different ways of picking. So I could be like, oh, I worked on the algorithms a lot to be like, okay, this is how much diversity I want in the team in terms of like, do I want to have 11 players from 11 different teams or like make sure it's like as least diverse as possible, as concentrated. And then there was other stuff around like using this, they had a CIT index, the creativity influence
Yeah.
threat index, using that, using transfers in just to see what's popular, using as much budget as possible, using less budget. And I was basically tinkering with stuff. And all my teams did terribly. And then I think towards the end of the season last year, they updated all the security where it's no longer possible to do any bots. And
So
so
you had
I
to.
decided to play for real and just to use, well, I'm using like a lot of dashboards now
Mm.
and a lot of data still and kind of doing a hybrid approach. And I'm doing really, really well.
Yeah, it's going amazing. I'm looking there. I didn't realize you were running 1,000 bots before. That's insane. I imagine you're going to get a bit of heat in the comments. But was that so? Like they've initially they've suppose they've tightened up on that, so that makes it even more impressive that we've broke 10 million players if it's cut out all the
Yeah.
bots.
Yeah. So it used to be super simple. I wrote a blog on how to do it and I was part of Discord communities that were doing
Oh
it.
wow,
So I wouldn't be surprised if there was 100,000 bots last year.
geez. So there's like it was a whole there's a whole sub community of that, but is that just been that's just
Yeah.
decimated now?
Now it's all gone to like team recommenders. So my last thing I wrote about was using AWS API gateway to make a simple recommender, and people could plug in their fantasy ID to this API, and it would shoot back saying you should make this sub and you should play
So
this team
it's
with these. Yeah, basically what FF Hub does, but
funny what you say,
worse.
actually, because there's what we've got here is if you actually, and before you build your team, if you go to recommended transfers and you plug your FPL ID in, it will tell you what transfers you should make. And if you want 12 days off and 30% off, you can sign up the hub using the link in the description. Kick on and win your mini leagues, or stay at the top if you're there. So, Connor, that's really interesting. We might actually have to talk about that a bit more in a podcast someday, because I didn't realize you had that many bots on. That's crazy. It's funny because I know like this. It's a weird one. I'm sitting here and I'm like, I can smell a bit of heat coming in the comments because like everyone here is probably like FPL purists, but ultimately it's been stamped out. This is your first season kicking in for real, and you're smashing it. But you're obviously heavily data driven. So do you want to build us this team from the back to the front? Let's start with your first goalkeeper.
Yeah, so my first goalkeeper is actually going to be Robert Sanchez at Brighton.
Okay.
I say I'm data driven, but I do like to look at players as well and pass the eye test. And I think I didn't pick any Brighton players at the very start, but once I saw them versus Man United, I was like, these guys, once they get a lead, they're very good at defending and very good at just attacking with as few players as possible.
Mm.
And yeah, Sanchez has done well for me.
So Sanchez is locked in. Who's our second goalkeeper?
Nick Pope.
Okay, Pope.
Yeah, so a big part of my strategy is that I rotate goalkeepers, and depending on the fixture, I'll pick each one. I'm pretty confident I've got the most points out of goalkeepers out of anyone in FPL
Oh
because
wow.
Nick Pope is the best goalkeeper, and I've gotten more points from goalkeepers than Nick Pope has because there's been some weeks where Sanchez gotten a clean sheet.
Mm.
Ha Having said that, I am planning a swap to Leno in the first 2 game weeks because game week 19 Fulham have a double game week, and
Yeah.
although he doesn't have the most clean sheets, he's got the most saves. So I think in that double game week, I think Leno's going to be the guy to own.
Yeah, he'll make a ton of saves, you'd imagine. Okay, so Sanchez and Pope, keeping that strategy going. Who is your first defender?
I'm going to go Kieran Trippier.
Yeah,
He's
locked in.
just, he's too OP. There's there's no way. Even though he was one of the big things I think that's going to happen in the second half is that a lot of World Cup players are going to fall off.
Mm.
A lot of England players went out early, and Trippier didn't play that big a part. I think he's going to be a really good second half of the season as well.
Yeah, he's the most points of any defender by some distance. 96 to Saliba's 74. So he's out front running. I mentioned recently that Trent's only got 40, so he's over double a Trent at the minute. Now that's just, I suppose that's I don't know, flawed to say that. I suppose just based on the seasons they have, but it's kind of just funny based off how dominant Trent has been on FPL for a few seasons that he's got double Trent's points. But anyway, who's your second defender?
Well, you said Saliba, so I'm going to go with Saliba.
Okay, he's in.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to play the first game week because was literally on the bench for France, but
Mm.
he is the next man in. Like Arsenal have tied the same amount of clean sheets as Newcastle, so I'm going to be going for 3 Arsenal defenders.
Oh, three of them. Okay, who's next?
Yeah, Zinchenko.
Zinchenko, here we go. And I'm
Yeah,
going back to what I love is I can already smell how differential this team's going to be compared to like the experts. And I remember making fun of you for this in the first game week, yet here you are. So I'm not making that mistake again. I'm just going to say, yeah, okay, let's do it. So
yeah,
Saliba and Zinchenko.
yeah. And then finally Ben White.
Ben White, yeah, good value there. So
Okay,
the
and
triple up.
yeah, the triple up. I think that's what I really found when I was doing my scripting last year was that the more concentrated your team, obviously the more variance it'll be. And I also just think that our Arsenal are going to have 2 double game weeks, and I'm kind of setting myself up when Arsenal and City are playing each other. I think in game week 23, I'm going to be using my bench boost then.
Okay, and the thing I'd ask you, well, I suppose whenever you're playing this, are you playing FPL to win it, or are you playing it to come in a top 10k, top 100k? Because what you're doing here is very clear, as you say, with the variance. It's boom or bust. It's you will have peak scores or you will have shit scores.
I'm playing to win your private league,
Okay, that's
and
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 then
to yeah, and to be #1 Fulham fan would obviously be awesome.
okay, cool. So 3 Arsenal defenders, love it, ballsy. Who's up in our fifth slot?
Lewis Dunk.
Dunks in. Okay.
Yeah, I like the first fixture against Southampton, but he's another guy I got earmarked to take out. I'm really looking at Kenny Tete at Fulham just for game week 19. So the plan is first 2 game weeks, they're going to build up 2 subs and take out Sanchez and Dunk and put in Leno and Tete for the double game week.
Okay. Would you normally have you been penciling in transfers kind of through the season, or is this just like at the
Yeah,
minute?
I like to write down what I think will happen throughout the season. So like
Mm,
for this second half of the season, in my notes, if I just look quickly, I say that I think Man City and Arsenal to finish first and second, Newcastle to qualify for Champions League, Tottenham and Man United to have a poor second half to the season, Liverpool makes Champions League, and then Haaland top scorer, KDB top assist, and Pope and Sanchez really high clean sheets, Leno most saves.
okay, so you're basing it off that. We'll move on to midfield. You've five midfielders to pick. Who's first?
Kevin De Bruyne.
Nailed, 100%,
Just
or
nailed. Yeah,
yeah,
like I watched a lot of Dortmund last year, and I saw Marco Reus play through ball to through ball for Holland. And then this year, I was like, oh, who's better at through balls than Marco Reus in the world? Well, KDB.
yeah, and it that's kind of came true, hasn't it? We've seen a few
Yeah,
of those, and you just see Haaland off on his bike with those big limbs. So De Bruyne's locked in. Who's next?
we'll say Miguel Almiron.
Almiron's in 5.8 million. Top midfielder, 93 points.
Yeah, like I saw him just play live. Sometimes you need your data, but sometimes you watch a game, just the eye test. I was like, Almiron is just too good to leave out. And so I love Sven Botman. I especially love that when he didn't play, he didn't play. He was on the bench, so I could sub someone in. He never got like 1 point.
Yeah,
Like someone
yeah.
like Perisic did my head in for getting 1 point throughout the season. But yeah, I was just like Almiron, too price efficient, too good.
Ticks both boxes. Eye test, data, price. He ticks every box. Okay, third midfielder.
Gonna go with Andreas Pereira, just sticking
Yeah,
with the efficiency. He's too cheap. He's gonna be on the bench at the start, but he's definitely gonna come in for the double game week.
nice for you to have a Fulham player as well.
Yeah.
Who
Um,
who's our next midfielder?
I'm gonna go Mohamed Salah.
Oh,
I have
okay. So
had
the double big boys in the middle of the park.
Yeah, I think I made hay by not having Salah all season, but the fact he didn't go to the World Cup and the fact that I really think Liverpool are gonna turn around the second half of the season, I
Mm.
think it's hard not to pick him.
Yeah, because a lot of people, I think, will typically pick either Salah or De Bruyne. The fact you've got both of them, and I imagine you're going to squeeze Haaland in, is very interesting. So you're going kind of threemium, I'd guess. But anyway, who's your fifth midfielder?
Leandro Trossard.
Trossard. Cool.
Yeah, I really liked the fixture against Southampton at the start. I think he's very fixture proof. He's a big game player that a lot of the time, if he has a tough game, that's when you want to play him as well.
So like, then you're obviously targeting the likes of that Arsenal fixture and the Liverpool fixture. But even outside that, you have Southampton, Everton, Leicester, Bournemouth, and Palace. So he's got a nice mix of really solid fixtures and then a couple of toughies, but you back him for them. He's at
Yeah,
home for them both as well.
yeah, I'm gonna be
Arsenal,
backing
Liverpool.
Trossard.
Okay, forwards. Well, I just put Haaland in.
Yeah, I put Haaland in, main man.
Haaland is in, locked. 9.2 predicted points against Leeds. I imagine he'll be your captain.
Yeah,
Okay, I've predicted something you were going to do correctly. That's a first. So Haaland captain, I like it. You're getting tight on budget. Who's our next forward?
Robert Firmino.
Firmino. Okay.
Yeah, the thing about the budget is that a lot of these guys I've had for a long time, and I'm not subbing them out to save budget. So I've
Yeah.
got Saliba at his starting price. I've had him since game week one.
That's the thing here because now we're looking at in the bank here it'll be 1.3 million. Now this is based off a 100 million budget, but I imagine obviously with your high position in the rankings and the fact that you've held some of these guys for a long time, you obviously do have a lot of balance built up. So if anyone's watching this and wants to copy, it might be quite hard. There might have to be one or two things they do different. But Firmino's in. You fancy him?
Yeah, again, I just really think Liverpool are going to have a really strong second half of the season. He didn't go to the World Cup. Darwin Nunez went to the World Cup. I don't have the budget for Darwin Nunez. I probably would pick him if I could. But I
Mm.
think, yeah, Firmino didn't go to the World Cup. He ticks all the boxes I want.
In he comes. So who's our last forward?
Edouard of Crystal Palace.
Edward.
He's he's the value pick. I got to go to a bunch of games. I got to see him play against West Ham. Yeah, I thought he was good.
And he's got a
I
couple of
think
nice
the
fixtures there.
Yeah, Crystal Palace are definitely one of those teams that should do well. They're very, yeah. They're like mid-table, but will always pick up good results.
Yeah, he Edward, he played at Celtic, didn't he? And he was class there. Or is that different Edward?
I have no idea.
Oh no, I was hoping you were going to go, yeah. All right, guys, don't troll me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure he played at Celtic. He definitely played at Celtic. I have to check that out before I go because there's no way that I'm going to let that one. Let me see. Edward. There's no way I'm pushing this out. And, on Edward, career. Thank God, yes, he was dominant at Celtic, then went to Palace. Yeah, because he's shown sort of glimmers of like real class and like really, really good finishing and really good play. But I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just start at Palace. I say all this to basically get the point across that I think he's a cracking player. We just haven't seen the best of him there because I remember at Celtic he was just dominant, and I know it's different and they are dominant in that league and whatever else, but anyway, Edward is a player who I always look at when I'm kind of in the budget striker sort of section, and he's one that always I look at and go, oh, he could be good, and then I look at the numbers and I'm like, ugh. So I'm surprised you've picked him because you're such a numbers guy, because his numbers always let me down a bit. Maybe I'm
When
wrong.
I've had to play him, he's done well, and I think he's a very just nice price efficient bench boost player. I don't see a situation where I'm going to play him in starting lineup,
Yeah.
but I think just on the bench, just someone to get 2 points during a bench boost week will be good.
Yeah, so I'm gonna plug these players in. I think you're gonna have to tell me who your bench is because I think it's kind of hard to know. Who are your bench in the first week, and then I can work it from there.
So Pope, it will be on the bench for the goalkeeper.
Yeah,
Saliba is going to be on the bench because I don't think he's going to start after playing in the World Cup.
cool.
Andreas Pereira is going to be on the bench.
Yeah, and then
And
Edward.
yeah.
And then Haaland captain. So if we run that 4-4-2, you have a team rating of 85%, a game week rating of 83%, an incredibly differential team at that, and you've got 65.3 predicted points. If I offered you we'll round it up. If I offered you 66 points now, would you take it or leave it?
I'd leave it. I'd want to gamble it on getting more.
He's going for gold. Top spot is where Conor's going, hopefully. But look, Conor, thanks for being here. People can drop a like below, drop a comment, and subscribe, please. And Conor, thanks for being here. Best of luck for the rest of the season.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
See ya.